Well, hello there, everyone. You have right here, I talk about for September 11th right here, and you see right here, I'm going to put together right here of like, this right here will be like a, kind of like a, like a theme, right? I'm like, yeah, something to, talking about, for September 11th that I went and drawn in, or maybe from, somebody that, maybe from a couple songs. Like, why do our younger kids, need to, hear about, that same story that happened nearly 11 I'm like, yeah, already over 11 years ago, about September 11th. And so it's like, yeah, about every year or so that you're going to hear about the anniversary about September 11th on the news. And you see right here is this right here will be my Photoshop work right here that I put together right here, like for example, right here for New York City. And I don't know if it's in case of anybody say that, yeah, if you included the details for Manhattan or somewhere, someplace like that. But still, though, that I can remember being in school around at this time, and it's just like, yeah, that during a time whenever I was in school, I can just remember that here in the principal, because I know that I can remember that I was in school and it was a half day, in school because there was going to be teachers meetings. There was teachers meetings that same day on that Tuesday, but September 11th, and yeah, like most of everybody else, that whenever you could have maybe been in college during that time, or maybe you're getting ready to go to a meeting, probably about 7 or 8 o'clock, a.m. that morning on that Tuesday morning. Maybe if we're on around election time, get ready to go to your polls, and for the election time, and yeah, so most of the time, like everybody else, that about exactly about what right around 5 a.m. that exactly what you remember about what you were doing on that morning on that Tuesday of September 11th. And I know some people say that you remember it very well. Some people may say that you don't remember too much at all, but you're right around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning that you were getting up and maybe having some breakfast, or maybe a cup of coffee, or maybe you turn on your TV and you looking at the weather. I'm like, yeah. So I know a lot of, maybe 20% of everybody else will maybe think that between 5 a.m. and maybe 7 or 8 o'clock, that they will turn on their TVs, just to be able to watch the weather, see what the weather is doing or something. And until that they hear a loud explosion that's coming up from something going on outside. And I know that from what I heard about that, you'll think as too is to where that you're if you're going to be turned on the TV, or you're thinking as to where something that looks like something from a movie. I'm like, something, you hear a loud noise and you're like worrying too that that's supposed to be the television set or the radio. But still though that it seems like whenever I hear about this, and also, yeah, a few, I'm sure most of us have already seen, and I posted from about 2 years ago, talk about, Tears of the Heart, about September 11th. But I mainly want to talk about, like, for grandkids, though. I'm like, the story about September 11th has been posted, of course, about every year that you're going to hear about it. And, I could talk about for true enemies, and, so yeah, that really, why would our grandkids really want to listen to the story? I'm like, if you got maybe a younger boy, or maybe if you got kids of your own, that you remember on that morning of September 11th, that you could have been what you call a young college freshman, or maybe if you could have been in high school, or maybe you were maybe a young maybe if you were maybe in the first grade or something like that. I'm like, but still, that those young kids who are even now are growing up now, and then they also had to tell their kids, like every year, that whenever you hear about it on the TV, that you read a newspaper, then you got sometimes it's like, yeah, if the kids see an article in the paper and like want to know that by every year, that whenever you hear that story, that you're like thinking as to it, that they're confused. The grandkids are going to be confused about this because they don't, that was before their time. And yeah, some grandkids that were born between the year 2007 and between 2016 or 2017, sometime right, that newborns, that as to something to have for their remembrance. And to me, it's like just like maybe like the assassination of John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, and for Pearl Harbor, I guess if you want. So yeah, World War II and other wars that were going on, in different years they say for the country, but still though that that I know that on September 11th, though, that in case if anybody that may want to were that, really that was a day that I'm sure most of us can remember, but didn't knowing about what they prepared to do. It's like, you were planning on a field trip. Yeah. You were going to go on a field trip that day, maybe to downtown New York City, or maybe if you were going to in case of anybody that may say that, you remember that day on September 11th, you were going to go to a festival or you were getting ready to head to a meeting until the day you have been reported that, you heard about a report of a plane crashing into a building. And I think that I keep thinking too that I know it said on the paper, but I think it was which tower they got hit first. I think it may have been the South Tower or something like that. On the 18th or so by the year 2021, I guess it'll be coming up on 20 years of the anniversary of the 11th. And so really that with our grandkids that they're going to say that what's this all about? And like say, yeah, that was before my time. And so it's like say we may think too that September 11th they had changed America forever. And but still though I can also keep thinking too that I during the time of September 11th I was in the state of Missouri. I'm like I was born and raised in Missouri, and I'm like, yeah, I was in Missouri during a time. So like I think as to where no matter what state that you're going to be in, maybe if you're going to be maybe in parts of Florida, I'm like, yeah, anybody that say that, yeah, they were down in Florida. Couples that were down in Florida, maybe during a conference meeting down in Florida, or maybe if they would have been maybe in parts of Michigan, or maybe at Los Angeles, California, or maybe parts of Washington or Oregon or any other state. It could have been maybe Nebraska or maybe Texas. Somebody that could have been in Texas during the time, and then they hear on the news about a plane crashing into to the World Trade Center. And so yeah, that in case if anybody were to ask me that really, though, you hear about these news articles, like you hear about anybody that want to talk about September 11th. They say that they were at home babysitting during the time, or they could have been maybe just home working on something in the garden until they heard a loud explosion, or they turned on the TV and found out that the buildings were on fire. And so it's like, yeah, that in case if anybody were to ask me, then I'm like, yeah, I remember. I remember where I was, but like I know I mentioned before, is to where if I could have been maybe in the classroom, taking an exam, if I was taking a test, and somebody would have mentioned to me about that, to where that are you aware about what's going on the news? And but still, but the way I think about it too is that you're looking at these planes right here that you heard about that is to where that about pilot training, and I know. That would have been about back in early, I think, of 2000 that I wanted to be a commercial pilot. I wanted to be a pilot, an airline pilot to a plane too. And just to kind of explore the plane ride also. And I thought it would be very neat to be able to get up in the sky and get up in the air. And so like I say, is to where that any sorts of pilot training. But, still though, that looking at the airplanes, and I know I've had a few model airplanes too. And like I say, that if anybody that may one or two that have a few model airplanes, and it's to me, it seemed like it was just it was just odd to just see something like that going on. You usually see something like that in the movies, yeah, but still though that to me that I know I've said this quite a few times to anybody that says it's what exactly came through your mind whenever you first seen that on TV. I'm like, well. To me, it looked like to me that, well, it's like, I don't think the pilots had too much to drink last night. I just really think that, for what's going on, because it looked like to me that, yeah, like that the pilots lost control of the plane, and that's how it crashed into the building. But until later on, I heard that no, those planes were hijacked. But I can remember that it was on a half day at school. So if we all know what half day means, is to where that I was going to be getting released out of school right around 10 or 11 o'clock that morning, and so I was. Yeah, most of the school kids going to that high school that I was going to, Francistown North and St. Charles. But I can remember that that whenever you go into school, I think I went into school right around 7:30 a.m. And I can remember that they had the TVs on there at the library. But I don't really know too much of those teachers. Yeah, some of those teachers, they probably did not cancel. Or reschedule very many of those meetings. But I can probably say too that, it was really hard to be able to concentrate on the math test and even the history test or any exams for what was going on the news media during that day on September 11th. So in case of any grandkids that may say that, that tragic situations like that happen, that you're likely thinking is that there was not a whole lot really that was getting done on that day, on September 11th. If they say there was an exam that you were supposed to take that day, there was a spelling test that you were supposed to take on that day, and so yeah, if I can remember right, that going to school on a half day, that there was only so much that really I could do, and anybody really can do within the 3 or 4 hours that you were going to be in school, and then taking a test, and going for about maybe 3 or 4 classes, and I can remember that on that day of September 11th, that the field trip, that if there was, if I can remember right, yeah, there was no field trip on that day, but if I can remember right, that going into school, that if there was a test that had to be rescheduled due to the fact because what was going on in our country on that day on September 11th. So I know that, yeah, September 11th, that on that day, that most of Americans can still remember that not only that, they will want to know about what's going on and what's going on with the planes, and, we were under attack, but still that, that they were supposed to go for training right around 9 a.m., yeah. The building maybe right next door, that they were supposed to report for any sorts of training, for maybe for a job or something like that. Or yeah, you hear about that to where that married couples married couples who even lost loved ones, that they were waiting for their test results about a newborn baby that was coming in. I'm like, yeah, that was going to be soon to be born. I'm like, you're waiting for the test results from the doctor. So yeah, that a number of things that everybody will probably say that September 11th, that was, it was planned, but still, yeah, exactly, that anything related to situations that come up like that, like an attack, and I know that most of us would maybe say that to where now that since they got a lot of this advanced technology, but even at the airports, but according to my understanding about what I read about on the news, though, that really about the airport security. The airport security, that they had metal detectors and all that during the time, and surveillance cameras, but you warned too is to where that a lot of what was going on over there at the airports, you warned too that how come that a lot of those, a lot of maybe checking the luggages and all that, how come that a lot of those, and I know that in case of anybody that may want to worry about those airplanes, that if we're talking about military equipment, then you're likely thinking too that for any source of security that they would have over there at at the airports, but still though that you're likely thinking too that if I can remember right, that some of those airport tenants working there at the airport even mentioned about that some of these hijackers that did not have the proper identification, and some of them were even in the country illegally. So you're likely thinking too that that whenever during the time that the passengers were boarding the planes, that a lot of times it's like, yeah, that, for how long it takes to check your bags, how long it takes just to be able to check your ID and then getting your boarding pass and all that stuff, all those other important datas, but still that for only so much time to be able to board the plane and prepare for takeoff and all that. So if that was right around 6 or 7 a.m., on that Tuesday morning whenever the planes were taking off, and you're likely thinking too that some, if anybody that says this, to where if you would have seen something wrong, and I know that I think that there was once or twice, I heard on the news at one time that somebody says that they mentioned something wrong. They mentioned something wrong about one of those hijackers, that apparently that they had a passport that said something about they seen something that was wrong, something about that the Mohammed, I think, a few of those other hijackers that were in the country illegally, and then something else about, a fake ID or something like that, or it could have been a passport that was outdated or something like that. So it's like, yeah, that you're likely thinking too that a lot of things that were going on there at the airport, they didn't check very thoroughly, and then that you're likely thinking too that hey, that before that the plane departs from the airport, knowing about what all they could have done also, but still though that if we're talking about within 2 hours it takes just to board the plane, and then for making sure that everybody was on board and knowing about before takeoff, and but still though that you're likely thinking too that any sorts of training that you need to be able to get just to be able to do a good job, but still though that say in case of anybody say, yeah, well, what do you call good job, but still that we learn by our mistakes, yeah, but still I tell you one thing though, I know whenever I was in school that quite a few questions were asked to me, such as, what do you think that our country should do about those people those attackers who were responsible for September 11th attacks. But still, though, that I know that over there at the airport that if they would take the time to check the IDs and all that, but still, though, that I know that with the airplanes, so that according to my understanding that there's been a couple of times to where that the airliners would see something wrong, but then a lot of times that the passengers who were getting ready to board the plane would always say something like that, I'm in a hurry, well, we're getting ready to depart. So I know a lot of the airport security that at the planes were scheduled to depart right around 9 a.m. or something like that, just to make sure that they were on time, on schedule, the departure of the airlines. So you're likely thinking too that the plane was scheduled to depart right around 7:45. So let's just say about what time was it whenever the first plane that hit, the first, Bill might guess if it was the South Tower. I guess if that was right around 9:45 a.m., then the plane would have departed right around 7:45, something like that. But, still, though, that checking the times, though, and I like it thinking, too, that about how long it takes just to board the plane and how long it takes just to check to see that, do they all have valid IDs or passports and exactly what they're carrying on them. And so, yeah, that you're likely thinking, too, that, from the airport security from back in 1995, you're likely thinking, too, that a lot of things that you're kind of wondering about also. But still, that but you have right here for like you're talking about for enemies too, and but still, in case of anybody that say that really about every year do we really have to explain to the grandkids about exactly about every year you hear about it, and like I think it's to where that was before my time, but I know that really, can you really get through life thinking as to where that any of your grandkids or maybe friends' kids, younger kids, that every year that you're going to hear about it on the radio or on a news station, even in the newspaper, any magazines that you're going to hear about these articles about September 11th, and likely thinking too that anything that is related to the fact about about September 11th, that knowing and understanding about, hey, that with about this article about you, what